Welcome to the space between us. I'm your host, Christine Young, psychologist and founder of Weaver. This is a podcast about your social health and connections and what happens to them when you are building something that demands everything. If you are leading, founding, or building something ambitious and wondering how others stay connected to those they love and care, this is for you. Every episode, I speak with leaders and founders who share what it really cost them and what they learned along the way while building big things. Not your usual expert advice podcast, just truth. This is the space between us. Let's meet there. Welcome to this episode. Our guest today is Jorden Lam. She is the General Manager, Head of Member Services and Operation at HESTA, having previously served as General Counsel and Company Secretary, building deep expertise across legal, governance, risk, and strategic execution. She has also held non-executive director roles across the health sector and has been recognized with multiple industries, including Young Executive of the Year by the Australian Financial Review and the University of Melbourne's Young Alumni of Distinction Award. Beyond the achievements, she is also a fierce advocate for diversity and inclusion, a champion for women in leadership, a mother, and a business owner. In this conversation, we talk about the real cost of being an ambitious woman, what she calls being the happy product of tiger parenting, and the marriage she has built with someone whose strengths are the opposite of hers, and the years she spent trying to start her family while still driving a demanding career. She is currently pregnant with her second child, and this conversation is as real-time as it gets. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode. As you know by now, this podcast is about having conversation with senior leaders, seasoned founders who have chosen ambition. And today's guest is definitely one of them. Jorden, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Jorden, I was reading your bio. You are a lawyer by trade, General Counsel, and now General Manager at HESTA, and non-executive director across multiple sectors. And you were awarded AFR Young Executive of the Year. You also found a women-led law firm. You are a mother, blogger, diversity and inclusion champion. While you have built a lot in your life, have you always been this ambitious, or did ambition find you along the way?
Christine, I think ambition is probably something that I probably embraced as a label later on, maybe in my career. I probably intuitively felt it. But if you asked me, when I was perhaps younger or earlier stage in my career, I don't know that I necessarily would have thought deeply about it. I just constantly felt like I was chasing. There was this inherent desire to chase more, but I couldn't tell you what more looks like. I felt like an inherent desire to keep progressing, to keep achieving. And I think so much of that has to do with inherent, like my cultural upbringing. I think a big part of it comes from, and I know I've shared this with many people before, I am a happy product of tiger parenting. I'm the eldest in a family where my parents are both Cambodian Chinese migrants, and they are your typical cliche parents who worked very hard in blue collar jobs, sacrificed everything to make sure myself and my sister could have the best future possible. And how that translated, it was them giving us everything and anything that we needed at our disposal for a really solid and strong education. No, I don't think in your earlier youth, none of us know what success looks like. I probably still don't know what success looks like, but certainly when you're younger and you're shaped by what your parents impose on you, I suppose, in that way, by way of expectations, I think you end up in two camps. You either fight it desperately and, some people don't respond well to that, or I think I would be in the other camp, which is I responded quite well. I kind of embraced it and did the very best I can to not disappoint my parents. I think that was what drove me in the beginning. It was almost like an innate sense of guilt. And maybe that comes with being the eldest as well, like seeing the sacrifices from my parents and feeling like, oh, well, I better make it worth their while. They've invested so much in me. I did the tutoring from a very young age. I had private tutors all throughout high school. I had extra piano classes. I had violin classes. I was in dance classes, art classes. Like, they exposed me to everything. And except for maybe team sports.
That is also, I gotta say, very Asian as well.
Totally Asian. Totally Asian. As a parent now, I kind of think it's actually really important to expose your child to sports because it's the teamwork, it's the socialization, the building of the emotional intelligence. I think that, of course, as migrant parents, they just focus solely on academics, which, I don't fault them for. But it did feel like there was a lot of pressure growing up. And as I said, the cliche career paths I had with that kind of upbringing was you're either a lawyer or a doctor. And so I chose to be a lawyer, and thankfully it was something that really suited my personality, suited my natural strengths. So that in that sense, it worked out well for me. I responded well to that level of pressure. And I think that then eventually translated into my own version of ambition.
Yeah, I really like that. I haven't heard a lot of Asian describing they are the happy product of tiger parents. And I love that because it's a success story. It's highly pressured. And you wake up and do your homework and also attend all the curriculums. And what I'm hearing from you is all worth it. And also being very grateful to your parents and really acknowledging their sacrifice and effort. I think we don't talk enough about that as well. As Asian, we always talk about, it's so hard, A is not enough, but we need to get A+. All that inherent drive to succeed and now keep achieving and chasing. Who are the people with you along the way? Like, support you at work and at home?
My husband. We've been married for 15 years, nearly 16 years now.
Yeah.
And I met my husband in my later years of law school. So that was still a phase where I still felt quite uncertain about myself. I still lacked a lot of confidence around what I could do, what I couldn't do, and the path I should take. For example, in those later years of law school, when you're applying for the graduate roles and the clerkships, and it's so competitive and there's few roles, I didn't get into the preferred firm that I wanted. And I took that so hard. Like, I got other offers. It's not like I didn't get other offers, but the top tier firm that I really, really wanted, that I thought to myself, this is the career path I want. And by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be a partner at this firm. The fact that I couldn't get a clerkship and couldn't get a graduate role with this firm was shattering to me. And it made me feel like such a failure. And it was someone like my husband at the time, who I feel like he was so wise in telling me, even at that young age, that career paths are varied. And just because you're not taking that path there now, that perfect linear path, A, doesn't mean that you won't get there, but B, maybe actually you might find that you want a different path altogether. And so he taught me to be very open-minded, and he helped me be more open-minded about what a career looks like. So I think that kind of perspective has been really critical in the foundation I have to supporting what I need to do and wanted to do. And then, of course, there's my family. I think they're supportive in a way that I describe. They support in a way that they don't understand. They're always there to be in your corner if something goes wrong. They don't know how to help. They don't know how to say things that will help, but knowing that actually foundationally they will always be there to back you has been so critical for me as well. And of course, throughout the way, you really need people in the professional environment who you can go to with your questions, mentorship, coaching, all of those individuals that I've come across that have been so willing to share their view on the path and to help me open doors. I can think of so many throughout the various parts in my career, not necessarily always constants, but I can remember the ones that have been there to open doors for me. And so recognizing that has made me feel like I need to make sure I equally put in that effort to open doors for others. One thing I've been so mindful of is I don't think inherently that's in Asian culture either. I think in Asian culture, and maybe this is particularly migrant culture, I see it in my parents, is you're really focused on protecting yourself rather than actually helping others, because they see it as a very competitive environment. And certainly in Asian countries, I think the working culture is much more competitive. An example of that is I'd have scenarios where I might share with my mum, I've been promoted and, I have a team, etc. And she would make comments like, oh, that's great, but, be careful to keep your head down because you don't want people to cut you down. Don't be boastful about your promotion because people might cut you down. And I'll be careful about the people you hire, because what if they want to take your job? Which is actually really counterintuitive, I think, to a Western working environment.
Particularly in Australia, we have BOWEMI, which is the tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
Like, tall poppy syndrome plus what your mum talked about, and all it's not about your mum. It's very cultural. When you're too shiny, the thief will come to your house and steal things. And that's very much Asian culture as well. And I have a question about, you mentioned your husband was very wise to share with you there is other career path varies. As a supportive husband, what qualities you think he has along the way, or has he always been this wise?
I would never tell him he's always been this wise, Christine. Never. I think we're similar. So he's equally very ambitious. Oftentimes people say, is it because, he's different, he's more laid back than me? I tell you what, my family, my sister, who's very different to me in particular, they would probably say that Lawrence and I are probably the most highly strung people that they know. So he's equally ambitious, equally driven, but him and I are very, very different. I'm really fascinated by all the research around strengths. So Gallup, Clifton strengths, all that sort of work. I think that stuff resonates so deeply, has such broad application. And even though in many ways when it comes to a career perspective, our views and approach can be very similar, our strengths are actually completely different, which is what I find so fascinating. And I think one of his strengths is he likes to think deeply about different options. I think he likes to go into the data, likes to do the analysis, and that in turn perhaps makes him more open-minded. There is a trait within him where I think he doesn't see a path as linear. I remember reading his strengths report actually, and there was a line in there, something to that effect, that, he doesn't look at problems in a linear way. He looks at things in a very creative way. And I think that's where it comes from. Whereas for me, I can have more of that tendency, and my top strength is an achiever, which they describe as meaning that you can take on a lot, you can do a lot all at once, all at the same time. So you have immense stamina. And I think that plays into why the tiger parenting worked on me, because in a way, by pot luck, it just happened to be my strength. So it actually worked well. But for somebody without that strength, I can see why tiger parenting would actually make you fail.
Yeah, absolutely. And almost you're born with that potential and your parents actually just spark it. And even when becoming adult, when you do those assessments, it's discovered that actually that's a lie. And it's very interesting because the work that I do is working with senior people and sci-fi professionals. I didn't expect this is my career. Like I do executive coaching, but it turns out now it's executive couple therapy. There are a lot of high-fly couples. Both of them are very ambitious and, always fly in, fly out. And it turns out there are a lot of relationship issues. So I think a lot of people listening to this podcast, it will be wondering, how do you and your husband create a team and create a family and also individually have ambitious career? So is there a secret ingredient?
I theorize. I have a theory. I don't know that it's validated. I think it starts with both of you being very good communicators. I think you need to invest in being a good communicator. We talk about this all the time in the importance of it in a work context. But it's actually the critical key to being able to resolve conflict, right? And so if you're a good communicator, that is already baseline, your ability to articulate thoughts, concerns, needs, wants, expectations. Being able to articulate that clearly to one another is one. But with that foundational capability, it's also actually being conscious of doing that. I think the longer you're in a relationship, the more, again, very cliche, you go in with a lot of assumptions. You assume you know this person, you assume they'll react a certain way to things. And I think sometimes that can be quite flawed because people change over time. And if you go in with the same assumptions based on what you know of this person 3-4 years ago, actually, if you don't take a step back to evaluate your relationship and each other, you may not recognize that you've actually changed over that time. And therefore, those assumptions that you applied to one another don't apply anymore. Making sure you actively challenge that, I think that's important. Because if you're not taking the time to reset and actually reflect, that can cause a lot of tension as, you go into the mix. And as you say, it's very hard. I find it incredibly difficult to juggle a full-time career where, my husband is equally in a full-time, very demanding career, have a child, manage the household.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. I do find it very, very hard.
Yeah. And you mentioned that communication or repair. People will then ask, it's easier than done. How do you find a time to speak. The questions that I get all the time, like, you know, we fly in, fly out, we are so busy, we finish work at 10 p.m. and then I need to put the kids in bed and cooking dinner and then da da da. And then how do we find the time for the couple to talk?
I think we always make time for things that are important. So I can describe the home life we have. I mean, exactly as you described. We had a week where I was in Sydney overnight. I came back, and then my husband's in Sydney straight after, and then he comes back. And there isn't a lot of time to communicate. It might not be until he got home at the end of the week and, you know, dinner's done, washing's done, cleaning's done, my child's asleep, and you get half an hour. You get half an hour to sit down before then you want to go to bed. And that is that half hour period of time that actually oftentimes we probably, most of us, I feel, turn on Netflix or doom scroll YouTube, or, you know, that's where you feel like, oh, I'm going to rest my mind.
Yeah.
But actually those things, I think intuitively you may feel like it's what you want to do, but they're not the things that are actually good for you. You're not actually unwinding by watching mindless TV. Your brain is just in a frozen mode.
Yeah.
You're actually not defragging, and you're not actually unwinding and resting and restoring. And so actually it's much more restorative to have an authentic conversation with your partner.
Yeah, and it's way more meaningful. And you finish the day feeling, this is what I also achieve as well, is to have deep connection time with my husband, which is important.
And it doesn't always need to be like a deep conversation. This is a practice we tried to adopt for some time, being connected and engaged on each other's goals, or daily, even weekly kind of things, like being across what the other is really trying to achieve. And when I'm not talking like big long-term strategic goals, I'm literally talking about what does my husband need to achieve this week? Like, what's his priority this week? Being across those sorts of things. So we've not been so good at it lately, but we did for a while try to have a discipline while over a very crazy morning breakfast routine. You know, we'd kind of ask one another, what do you need to do today for you to feel like it was a good day or a successful day? What do you want to achieve today?
And me and my partner do that very often as well. We do a weekly evening, Sunday dinner, off all the TV, put away the phone, and just cooking together and have that conversation. What is your priority in your coming week? And is there anything, any way I can help you to support you? We also mentioned about in your village, your family, husband, and also people at work. You said you have great mentors and even probably sponsors. Do you seek them actively, or do you people approach you and want it to be your mentor, or how does that work?
That's a really interesting question. I think there's been a mix if I reflect on the people that I've engaged with. I think it has started with being very open-minded. I by natural nature am an introvert, so I don't naturally want to go and seek out conversations with people I don't already have a close bond with. But I've tried to fight that over the years because I know it's a critical, important thing to do to actually build strong relationships to achieve outcomes. I don't mean this in the artificial networking sense. I think networking is just, for someone who is an introvert, just sounds horrid and you don't want to do it. But it is when you are in those environments where you have a shared goal and a shared purpose, where this is the environment where you can actually open yourself up to building connection and opportunity to new relationships. And so a really good example of that is, I think, when you're out there doing studies, whether it's a short course or a longer term like a master's. I recall during my master's, I met a number of people, a number of students, you know, that were in different industries, working in different environments, and just being open to forming those sorts of connections. I think that's true, genuine networking. And so from that kind of approach, I then naturally come across people who, hey, I really respect this person. They're so different to me. They bring a unique perspective. And so I have sought them out in that mentorship type of way. And then in other scenarios, again, based on that similar approach, putting yourself out there, having the conversations, being open in those conversations has then drawn some others to me where, yes, I have had people come and offer, hey, you know, I'd be happy to offer you that kind of mentorship if you feel it would be helpful for your career. So a mix of both, but critically it has come down to really having those genuine conversations. I mentioned earlier, you know, the traditional let's go to networking drinks and network. It's flawed because I think there isn't the commonality, like as I said, where you have a common purpose task that you're working towards. So it feels even more artificial. But then equally in those environments, you often aren't having genuine connection kind of discussions. And so you're not building that genuine rapport such that it invites that kind of deeper connection or relationship. I think that that's kind of how I feel like these relationships I've had have come about.
And what does genuine connection looks like and sound like? How do you define that's a genuine connection?
One where I feel like I can provide an honest view or honest opinion or share a thought beyond talking about events, beyond
Yes.
talking about an industry view on something, beyond talking about the weather, what we did on the weekend. Like a genuine connection comes from being able to be your authentic self.
Yes. And you feel safe to talk about your own thoughts
Yes.
without
Having a
knowing there
view.
will be any like negative
Correct.
consequences come back to you.
Correct.
And have you made good friends out of this network?
Definitely a couple of boards that I've been on, other directors that I've met have turned into genuine, amazing, close friends that I will see on the weekend and holiday together with. Like that, they are the true connections that I'm talking about. Yeah.
And was there a moment where you felt that there is a cost of your ambition to any of this relationship, like marriage, family, motherhood, any cost of your ambition?
Definitely. I don't think so much my relationships have suffered. I think it's more certainly family in the context of starting my family. So I went through an IVF process. It was quite long and protracted because I didn't want to start a family until a little bit later. So whilst, I got married quite young in my 20s, I didn't really think about, want to contemplate even children until much, much later. And of course, for a woman, that just means it's harder. When you're older, it's just harder. So that was a pretty significant cost. I think emotionally, financially, all of the things that come with having to go through a protracted IVF process. But I would say I've thought about this a lot on reflection. I still don't think I would do it differently. I think a lot of people sort of say, oh, if I'd known it would be this hard, I would have started earlier, would have this, would have that. But I really genuinely feel like the life stage was right for me because of my ambition. I feel like, when I was in my 20s and 30s, early 30s, I was still very much focused on driving my career and trying to achieve some goals that I had in mind. And if you'd told me at that stage, even if you'd given me a crystal ball, I think, if you'd shown me, hey, if you keep deferring having children until later point, this is the experience you're going to have. The only different thing what I would have done would maybe have been with my husband say, well, let's freeze my eggs and freeze some embryos earlier to make it a bit easier. Because then you're much younger then and that would help. That's probably the only thing I would do differently. I don't think I would say, oh, well, knowing how hard it would be, I wish I'd started children early, because I just don't think I would have been in the right mindset to really enjoy motherhood.
And also the maturity, isn't it? I think different people will have different paths, but I think there are certain thing about career. Career actually mature yourself. Like me running my business, I always say the maturity of my business actually is come from maturity of me. Like we grow together. And I think different people will see this differently. And for you, the case is, this is just the right time and the right stage of life for you.
For such a long period in my early stage, I genuinely was so adamant and sure that I didn't want children at all. I felt like having children would get in my way. I felt like, and my father was also very unwell for a period of time before he passed away. And so with that was the complexity of, caring and looking after my mum and my dad. And at the time, I remember the conscious feeling was I felt like I didn't have any more to give as a caregiver. I felt like I don't have enough capacity for caring for myself. I didn't want to have another being. I wanted to be able to be self-indulgent and have the freedom to do whatever I wanted without yet another constraint. So I do think genuinely, had I'd had children earlier, I probably would have felt resentful at the sacrifices I would have had to make at that point. Whereas now it's very different for me. I feel like I'm in a space where I value motherhood so much and I enjoy it so much more than I could have anticipated.
Yeah. And how do you manage work and home, parenting and home?
Still trying to figure it out, Christine.
I love this honest answer.
It's so hard. Some weeks it's fine. Other weeks, like I said, where I got to say that week where both myself and Lawrence were going to Sydney, we realised very late that it was happening. So there was a moment of panic of, my God, you're going to Sydney too? No, I'm going to Sydney. well, we can't both go to Sydney. And it was just this flurry. Okay, how do we make it work? How do we coordinate? Do we have the carers? And this is the village, right? So we're very, very lucky. We have the village. We have Lawrence's parents. We have my mum, my sister. We've got the nanny. We've got childcare. You really need to be willing to bring in the help, and that's kind of what makes it doable. But it's still incredibly hard. I often think, motherhood, full-time work, just hard to make them go together. You really sometimes think you do need someone who's full-time headquarters at home, just running life. It's needing to really take turns between the two of you and really making sure that you're not taking it all on yourself as a mother, because I often think that can be the role that a working mum takes.
And does your ambition change after you become a mother? Does the being a mother enhance it or actually change? And in what form it has changed?
I don't think it's changed. I do say this to people a lot. One of the things I was very fearful of when I was pregnant was because my career and my ambition has defined me and my identity, it's part of who I am. I was actually terrified at the idea that if I had my first baby, that I would then become, all of a sudden, my perspective is totally different. My priorities are different. I don't care about work anymore. I only want to be a stay-at-home mum. And, that's absolutely fine for women that feel that way. But I didn't want that to be me, because that was never my identity. And I was terrified of that change in my personality. But it didn't happen. It wasn't that way. So I would describe it as just now I have another priority work stream
Work stream.
that
Love it.
I need to carve out time for. So just equal importance. So it's more pressure, if anything. The ambition's the same, the desire's the same, the priority, I've just got another one now. And so that's where the juggle becomes so hard. How do you make sure you're not prioritizing one over the other, or you're picking the right moments to choose? It's that constant juggle.
Yeah, does being a mother actually change how you lead?
Yes, I think so. I think it makes you more willing to be direct. Certainly for me. I think by nature, I'm generally a direct person. I think the way I manage my team, the way I, manage my leaders, I'm quite direct and clear around expectations and how I like to work. I think when you're a mother, you have even less mental time, I think, that you want to allocate to mere niceties. I think it makes you, in that way, maybe more efficient.
Yeah.
And you're clearer, right? I think you're clearer in expectations, because you don't want to waste any time with any unclear communication, unclear direction. You just want to have absolute certainty, because then you can plan. You can make sure the life juggle and the pie are all working in sync.
And the time with family is precious. And
So that is one thing I have noticed in myself. I think previously, if I was sitting in a long, protracted half-hour meeting, I would have go along with it, and you do what you need to do, and then you leave the meeting thinking, oh yeah, that could have been maybe a 15-minute meeting. But sure, you spent another 15 minutes just waffling about unnecessary things. Whereas now, I think if I was in that scenario, I'm more inclined to actually wrap it. I will jump in more and sort of say, look, this is what we're trying to cover here. Are we comfortable? Great. Let's give each other back 15 minutes of each other's time, because I think we've solved it. I'm more inclined to do that, because it's just, I can't stand the wastage now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't have time to waste, period.
Yeah.
That's it. And what would you tell a woman who is standing at the crossroad right now? For example, they are planning for family or pregnant at the moment, and they are also ambitious and really afraid of what it might cost her. What will you tell her?
Well, it's funny you asked that, Christine, because I am pregnant right now with my second one. I am 4 and a bit months along.
Oh, congratulations.
And so this is a very real conversation. How will I tell myself to not freak out?
Yeah.
I am trying to think very hard about compartmentalizing the time right now, and being very clear about the things within my control and the things that are without. So within my control, I know that right now I have roughly 4 months to get some key things that I want delivered at work and key things I want to achieve in a good state before I then go on maternity leave. I can control what I want to do with that maternity leave and how I want to approach it. I cannot control the things that will happen in my absence. And I know that's one of the things that I've been feeling quite anxious about, because organisationally there's just been a lot of busyness, there's a lot of activity. And inherently, my nature is I don't want to miss out. There's all this work that I'm prepping on. I don't want to miss out on all the exciting work that is still to come. But I think that's something that I've come to terms with in terms of time boxing, what I can be involved in, what I can't be, accepting that. I'm sure equally while I'm on maternity leave, I mean, I really want to be present in enjoying that time because it flies incredibly quickly. And particularly in that time, one of my leaders, I think it was my CEO that said some time ago, and it stuck with me so deeply, that when you become a parent, the days are long, but the years are short. And
Mm,
I
mm,
felt that so deeply with my first one. And
mm,
definitely in the first 12 months, including, the birth of having an infant, like it's
mm,
a blur. Like the first few months disappear, you look up and it's been 3 months.
mm.
So I want to cherish that time. I know that sounds incredibly cliche, but I want to be conscious of cherishing that time rather than thinking about the things at work and what I'm missing out on. Like work will still be there when I get back, and
Mm.
I back myself to navigate whatever things will be in,
Yeah.
whatever state it's in, whatever's happening, to still be able to go back and slot in and be a valuable leader.
It sounds like it's time if there is a strategy, it's like a strategic plan for what life could be. Because I think, and how about the first time when you were pregnant with your first one? You mentioned about IVF. What was the support you get from your organization or going through with you mentally? How do you manage that balance, that unknown uncertainty with IVF, and everything is changing in your body? And how do you manage physically, mentally, and in your relationship? Anyone support you through that? I'm curious about your first
I think I
first round.
probably, on reflection, should have looked and reached out for more support. So we kind of navigated that process. It was quite protracted. I went through many years of it. But my husband and I didn't really talk to people much about it. It was just a real private thing. Yeah. I told a few of my executives at work just because, from a professional perspective, needing to go and do blood tests 10 times a week or that kind of stuff. So I did let them know, and they were very supportive. So they were key in making me feel like, oh, there's no pressure. Oh, I'm going to miss that meeting. That those sorts of things. They were really, really supportive. But I don't think I reached out and got the support and nurtured my mental well-being very well, because it was so hard. And after a while, it became the main way I coped with it and managed it was actually treating it like a work stream, like a process.
Yeah.
So it was a process that I had alongside with work that I just had to do. It was just a process I had to go through. And I guess in many ways, treating it like that made it emotionally less hard. But at the same time, in a way, I don't know, maybe on reflection, it feels a bit like denial almost, right? Because it's challenging, it's difficult emotionally. You're going through loss, you experience disappointment, but not really taking the time to process any of that and
Mm.
really just chugging along. Think that helped the survival of it. But on reflection, it probably had an impact on how I was able to lead at work, and maybe it had an impact on how I was personally without properly realizing it because I didn't seek help.
With a lot of women, my clients in exactly the same space. And I think as a women, so much is on our physical body that we cannot really share with anyone. The stress of fertility, infertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. You named it, and even every day that we have this hormonal cycle, even if you are not pregnant or trying to get pregnant, like that 28-day cycle, we don't even talk about it, but our energy so much depends on it. And I think this is something very interesting that I also work with a lot of women leaders, the mental health, and how do we actually work through that? All right, so this is the last question I have for you. It's very timely to ask you this question, I feel. If there is one human skill that you think that all of us need to learn to have a better humanity, what would you teach your kid or one school to teach your kids about this skill?
I think it's having true empathy for those around you, because empathy is at the heart of every kind of
Mm,
positive relationship,
mm,
communication. It helps you influence, it helps you build strong connections,
mm,
foundational. And if you assume it's true that for you to be happy, successful, have a strong and positive life,
mm,
that requires having community and connection, which I believe it does, then empathy is the foundation for achieving that.
mm,
And people talk a lot about empathy. And I know, you would appreciate this distinction, Christine. I think people think about empathy in a very generic way. It's
mm,
not really just being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I think the definition of that is more sympathy. Empathy is really trying to change your own mind framing. It's really more around being able to imagine yourself with somebody else's mindset
Yeah.
And with their mindset, putting yourself in those shoes with that reframing in your mind, that's much harder than simply,
Yeah.
well, if I was in their position, I would feel XYZ. That's not empathy. And so I think if there was some way, something that could help, I guess, society, people, children, as you bring them up, teaching people how to understand and be empathetic is such a critical human skill to have.
Or be curious about what's the other person's journey is and to understand rather than asking questions to respond. Such a key skills that we are so quick in our world. You want to get things done. And we pretty much ask leading questions all the time. Validate what you already know. And I think this is the micro skill. Drop your assumption, drop your biases
Correct.
as
Correct.
best as possible. We do have it. Acknowledge that we are not perfect as a human. We try to
Mm.
park it and be really present with the other person. And
Yeah.
I think that is very particularly hard in this day and age because of, our phone, AI, is always quick. You
It's
always
transactional. It's very transactional.
it becoming that, and it's going to be very interesting to see your kids grow up. Was there any questions that I haven't asked you but you feel like you want to share with?
One thing I reflected on recently in a conversation was
Mhm.
very ambitious people. You're also generally quite open to advice from your mentors, obviously, on how you achieve success, right?
Yeah.
And one of the really valuable pieces of advice that I received was early in my career where they said to me, you want to challenge the path that you think you must take. And so you really want to be open-minded to everything. So when opportunities arise, be a sponge, don't judge, say yes. Say yes
Yeah.
to everything because they are the opportunities that just don't know where they will lead you. But I think as you get later on in your career, you do need to learn when to say no because that's the counterfactual. And I'm very mindful of this with my achiever strength. That the flip side to it being a strength is you don't know when to say no. And then it becomes a do all of that. I think embrace all of those opportunities. But as you start building up your experience and your knowledge bank, start recognizing and picking and choosing the valuable opportunities because it will get to a point where you can't say yes to everything, but you want to be very intentional about what you say yes to.
And that comes from knowing yourself, your values, your vision, and stay in your lane. It's so much in the world now. You're so easy to be distracted. Now, today, thank you so much, Jorden, for being vulnerable, sharing, honestly, speak your truth. And I think a lot of people listening to this, and particularly women, feel empowered by what you said. And certainly I do. And keep up with your ambition. I wish you ever successful. Very proud to say, I know that Asian woman.
To you, Christine. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If this conversation resonates with you, I'd love you to share it with someone who is navigating the same tension, someone who is building something big and wondering how to stay close to the people they love and care. All the links and resources we talked about are in the show notes. New episode drops every 2 weeks. And if you want to stay connected between episodes, follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. I share stories, insights, and reflections on social health and relationships to help you build stronger connections. Until next time, I'll see you in the space between us.